Welcome, everybody. This is Dr. Kevin Connors. Welcome to another edition to Connors Clinic Live, our podcast that we try to bring in the best guests, and today's a perfect example of this. Let's see, you interviewed me on the Mold Summit. Was that what it was?
Yeah, that's how we met through the Toxic Mold Masterclass. It's coming out soon, and you have a bonus talk on cancer and mold.
Yeah, and I just loved what you stand for. And I know our patients and our listeners, mold is a big issue. Toxic mold is a big issue, but it's kind of an enigma out there, and you're going to kind of clarify some of that. So let's a little bit of a biography on you. You started out as an acupuncturist, practiced for, over a dozen years, and saw people in clinic as an acupuncturist. You started having your own health issues, and I'm going to let you carry on the story from there. So let's hear from you.
Yeah, that is accurate. So I started my practice life in Portland, Oregon. I was having my own chronic health issues, and I was working on my diet and working on my sleep and trying to get better. But I just was always cycling through lots of cold and flu and pain and period problems. And after a long time in this same home, about 8 years, I think, 9 years, found out, and my symptoms were getting a lot worse, found out that I had mold in the home. And after kind of dealing with all that, I sort of changed the direction of my career because I really wanted to talk more and focus more on all these things I was learning about detox and mold. And, in the end, I'm sort of thankful it happened because I really love this space. It's such an interesting topic, and it's really needed. And it goes so deep. I was excited to interview you because mold affects so many things, and I'm sure in oncology, it's not being talked about nearly enough. So I think the more we can, get it on the radar, the better it's going to be.
So how did you discover you had mold in your house?
I was going in a naturopathic college to get IVs and stuff, and I wasn't getting better. And they asked me about my home. They said, has anything changed in your home environment? And two things. We had gotten a cat, and we had some water intrusion in our basement. And the basement had always been kind of stinky, and it was like a finished basement. So they said, have you ever thought about checking for mold? And I sort of knew enough to know I didn't want mold. I wasn't too keen on checking, to be honest. Luckily, my husband at the time was like, I think we should check. So we got an inspector. We own the home. So I think an inspector is a great way to go. They check for water in the walls, and they check for improper drainage, and they do samples of drywall and air, and then give you a whole report. So that was sort of our first indicator. He found plenty of stuff. And then we started the process of remediating our home. We made tons of mistakes, so I got sicker. Depending on if you own or rent or where you think you're exposed, there are different options for testing and finding out.
Let's move into the realm of what you did to treat it.
Yeah, at the time, I didn't know much about detox and mold. I mean, I think looking back, luckily, those years I didn't know about it, working on my diet, working on other things were beneficial. They weren't ultimately enough, right? How could they be? But I think setting that foundation of, eating whole foods, and, I had really, ironically, I had really detoxed my house of other chemicals. I just didn't know I had mold. So those things, were sort of in place, but I didn't know anything about detox. I started seeing a local naturopath. She was very keen on treating EBV, which I also had, as a way to kind of quell symptoms. So we did what's that acid from coconut oil?
The lauric.
lauric
acid.
acid.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did some of that. We started on some binders. Um, I think she was my first person, but then I ended up seeing, a handful of different people. I got lymphatic massage, was using a sauna. So as I teach people, I kind of look back on what helped me the most in those early years and recommend them the most. So sauna helped me a lot. Coffee enema helped me a lot. Dry brushing helped me quite a bit. So those are like three of my top techniques. I think the supplements, can be helpful, but it can also be sometimes a little slow, to move the needle. But I have like my top supplements too. But yeah, looking back, I think a lot of what made me feel the best was sort of moving lymph and just kind of getting it moving.
So you made point of, if you don't get rid of the source, I mean, you're never going to get better. It's like
No.
if you have a glyphosate sensitivity and overabundance of glyphosate exposure, but you continue to eat glyphosates, you're never going to get better. So if you don't get rid of the source, you're never going to, you can detoxify is all you want, and you're never going to overcome that. Another point that you made is that the physical things like the sauna, the coffee enema, dry brushing, you equate to be the most positive experience in overcoming mold. All of those one could argue is you're just helping detox pathways.
Occasionally, for some people, those things can make them feel worse because they're not exiting the cut toxins, right?
Yeah.
So they're just recirculating. So you have to make sure you're having bowel movements. This is also where binders can help just get it out.
Yeah.
But for me personally, I can't remember ever feeling worse from a sauna, and an enema maybe just once or twice. I usually just always feel better. But yeah, everybody's different. Some of our clients like yours probably are very sensitive now to supplements and different techniques. I have clients who can only be in the sauna like 5 minutes, that type of thing. So you have to cater your treatment to yourself.
Now, curious why other people, everybody else in your house didn't get sick when you got sick.
So it's a combination of genetic factors, other exposures, age, stress. It could just kind of hit you suddenly, or it could be slowly taking you down. There is one gene, I'll just start with this, that can tag mycotoxins, and some of us don't have it. But really, there are many genes at play when we're trying to detox from mold. It's not just that one. There's also how well we recycle glutathione and that kind of thing. So there's lots of, factors at play. But generally, because our body recycles bile, we can recycle the mycotoxins that the bile is trying to remove. So, and then if we're still in the moldy house, right, we're still getting exposed. So generally, it's like a slow breakdown. And then for some people, it could be, worsening mood, gaining weight, developing asthma. Some of your clients could be developing cancer, and you don't know that's happening. So often things are happening behind the scenes, and I suppose there are some people who really do sort of get unaffected, but I always kind of wonder what's happening, down deep, like what's going to appear, right? It takes usually 10 years to discover an autoimmunity. So everybody's kind of different. That's really why. And the levels of exposure can be different too, whether it's just like one little corner in your house or it's really kind of everywhere. So yeah, lots of factors at play. And sometimes that's why there's some doubt or disbelief. It's like, why are you so sick and I'm not? But that's just life, right? We all get sick in different ways.
It makes you think that how many people are dealing with mold issues that don't know it. It just it's sad. You lived in Portland area at the time. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Now, I know there's been a lot said and written about different areas of the country that are more susceptible to mold issues. What would you say to people that are living in areas that are rainier? Is it good to get some plates to get your house checked? Some auger plates that you can check your house with?
Well, yeah, I will say rainy, also humidity. Is another factor, old home factor, new home can be a factor. So lots of factors. I would say the first step is think about your home stewardship. Like, how are you taking care of your home? For instance, I definitely should have been running a dehumidifier in our basement the entire time. So I would say before, maybe we'll move into when to test, but I would say, I wasn't a good steward of my home. Our gutters weren't draining correctly. We didn't run that dehumidifier. Some of the things we wouldn't have known about because they were in the walls. But, are you like cleaning your gutters and just maintaining the home well? Like, have you ever checked your crawl space? Like, is anyone checking your attic? So, just be aware of possible water intrusion and how you're managing humidity. And if you see anything or smell anything, if you have like water staining, this film in your basement, musty odor, then it may be a good idea to get inspected or do some testing. I would say especially if you have some health issues in the home. And then, like I said, there's lots of ways to do it. You can do the plates you mentioned. There's a new mail-away air test I just learned about. It really just depends on your budget and if, again, you're a renter or an owner. Sometimes starting with the plates could be good even though they're not perfect, just to get an indicator, because if they're like off the charts, then you may want to talk to your landlord or do a dust test, do something like that.
Yeah, that becomes even a bigger difficulty if you're renting. It's expensive to remediate a house. I can't imagine the cost that you went through. I've had patients that have spent, upwards of close to $200,000 to end up tearing all the studs out of your house, and it's extremely costly.
It's costly, and I can see why a landlord doesn't want to get involved with it. Right. But at the same time, it's a hard enough decision if it's your own home and your own health. And then if you've just got tenants, it's like, well, is it really as bad as you say? And why can't we just like bleach it and paint over it? Unfortunately, a lot of that happens. And there is, some legislation being proposed for this sort of thing. And there are some legal kind of precedents that you can work with. But I also kind of talk to my clients about, don't waste too much energy on different battles, because the most important battle is your health, I think.
Yeah, it is. Let's go over, if a person is suspecting that they might have mold issues, what are some of the top symptoms that a person would see?
Yeah, I think the top two that I see are brain fog and low energy. And really like those kind of chronic, deep, you're not getting rid of it type of thing. Even when, you've changed your meds or you're eating right, and you're getting, 8 hours of sleep and you're just dragging, you can't think clearly. I see those as the top two. But it really can be quite the spectrum, because it's inflaming potentially any organ and depressing the immune system, inflaming the brain. So you can have like weight loss resistance, like sudden weight gain, asthma. Kids can have a lot of ADHD. Adults could have depression or rage or anxiety, insomnia. Some of my symptoms, again, like nobody really said to me, it could be mold. Like I was having like breakthrough bleeding on my periods. I was having like chronic back pain, just like getting colds a lot. I had some anxiety and sleep issues, definitely chronic digestive issues, like lots of food sensitivities can really be a sign of mold because of the way it's breaking down your gut. That one gets missed a lot. So lots of potential things. And I think that's why, unfortunately, it can get missed. And thinking about what you do, Kevin, when, nobody wants to get to the point where they're getting a cancer diagnosis. So I think it's a great idea, if you are dealing with chronic symptoms and you're listening to this, to really look at could it be mold, rather than just let these symptoms go on and on for years, because it can be developing even worse things like cancer, heart disease. So better to really look for those sources if you are having chronic symptoms of any kind.
How would you test a patient that came in with those symptoms?
Well, if you're looking for mold, there is now a urine mycotoxin test. There's a couple companies, maybe three or four actually. So we use one, Great Plains Lab. It's just a urine mycotoxin test. So they didn't have this test. I'm trying to think how long they've had it now. Do you think 5 or 10 years?
Yeah, I think it's been about that.
Yeah, so they didn't used to. They used to use non-specific blood markers. And even that hasn't been going on all that long, 20, 30 years. So it's really great that we have this test now. You can just at-home urine test. You can run it on a kid. I think the guy who I interviewed even ran it on his dog. So you could do that.
Really?
Eating dog food is quite moldy. Oh yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, and lots of animals have cancer now too. So yeah, it's a really easy at-home test. It's fairly affordable.
This is a question that listeners would have. If they were to leave their environment, they're trying to do all sorts of right things, and detoxing and supplements and things and dietary, but they're still not getting better. But they go take a 2 week vacation down in Florida or Arizona or something like that. Would they notice a change? Would that give them a
I think
clue?
sometimes, a lot of people will say, "Do you feel better when you leave your home?" But I think that can be a tough test, right? Because generally we feel better when we're on vacation. We're
Yeah.
happier, right? We're resting. So I probably had vacations I went on that I felt better, but I never thought, oh, it's my house. I just didn't put the two things together. But yes, it could potentially be a clue, maybe especially if you're having something like a stuffy nose in your house, right? And then you go away for a couple weeks and it's not stuffy. But I don't think it's perfect because you could still have the toxins in your body.
Well,
So you
yeah.
could still feel the same. So I don't think it's a perfect test. And since I've, worked with more people, I was somewhat surprised to see that you can leave the environment even for years and then they're still in your body. So you really have to usually actively clear them even once you leave the environment.
Well, that's what we spoke about with cancer. If you get mycotoxins in the cell, even though you clean up your environment and do everything, it still can be a cause of cancer that then takes 10 years to develop. So
Yeah.
it's a nasty thing. What are some let's talk about maybe 3 or 5 things that you want to leave the listener with when they're thinking, scratching their head, could it be toxic mold? What should I do about it? What would you tell them?
I might just direct people to our website and this event that you and I are both a part of because probably you're not going to like walk away just with like in your head and enough to take action, right? You probably want to have a list or have, so we have like a little mold guide with different types of ways to test. I have to think if it's in that guide, but I definitely, this is my book coming out too. This is a picture of it.
Oh,
I
let's see.
have
Hold
like,
that up again. There we go.
yeah, it's just a paper. I don't have it soon, hopefully, but I have like lists of, things to check for, right? Like the home inspection. And I'm not, the world's expert on that stuff, but I know enough to say like you can, look for moldy spots in certain places. You can look under sinks. You can test humidity. So once you have that list, you can do, go from that or a list of different types of inspectors to go from that. Because this is a huge project to take on. So it's nice to have something kind of in writing to look at
You can
this
do some
event.
self inspection.
Yeah, I think self-inspection is a great way. Going over the symptoms, and when we did some of those, but a light bulb may go off as you read more about possible symptoms and like maybe timing, as you said about like leaving a house. Actually, I think one thing that could coincide more is like when you moved in, like how long have you been dealing with this,
Yeah.
right? So like for me, things started, within the year of moving in. I didn't associate that because I also had a baby and had a new business and stuff. Usually I say test the space first. But you can, everybody's coming to me at different points in the process. So sometimes they've already tested the body and not the home, or vice versa. Always in medicine, if you have like a gazillion dollars, you could test everything at once.
Right.
But usually we kind of go in an order and go with our budget. And then another thing I'd say, if people are listening and they're not sure if they have any of this, just learning about detox techniques is a fantastic investment. I've been out of a moldy home for 4 years now, and I did a coffee enema today. Like, that's how into this stuff. I did a sauna and a castor oil pack together just yesterday. Like, I do this stuff all the time. It's not stressful. It's just part of my lifestyle because I'm always getting exposed to things. We all are.
Right.
So that's another, again, if you learning to be a good steward of your home, whether or not you have mold now, learning how to detox all the time is a great investment. And then just learning, how to identify mold and the symptoms in case you are exposed at some time would be like 3 great things I think that can come out of this. Yeah.
Well, we're going to have your information up, and maybe by the time this podcast comes out, you're going to have your book ready.
Yeah. Not just a 1 page. Yeah, it's actually now on Amazon, kind of.
Oh, good.
We got the Kindle up, but the cover didn't quite work for the paperback.
We'll get a link to that on this podcast too, and a link to your website if people want to look you up and utilize your services. You are a great asset to a lot of people. I really thank you for what you do.
Well, thank you for having me and just giving me a platform to spread the message. And I really appreciate your support of the event as well. It's been so great to get to know you.
Absolutely. Well, thanks everybody for attending our Connor's Clinic Live podcast. And Bridgit, we appreciate what you do, and we'll have you on again very soon. Great topic.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Bye-bye.